Madwa, Panuay Roshlam, stand and face Jerusalem. Could have gave it to me afterwards. Blessing of the Feast of Tabernacles. Barakatha Yahweh, Basham, Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Hak Hak, Sakawath, Bashalawam, the water, Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the Feast of Tabernacles in peace. Thank you, so be it. The Aliyah Ma'ah Shariah Machad, Psalms 121. Anya Harayam Mayim Yimya Oh Harim Mayan Yabawa Izoria Yabawa Mayahu Shai Shamayam Waratazat Wa Yanathan Lamawat Ragalia Yala Yanawam Joshua Marka Hana La Yanawam Wala Yashan Joshua Mar Yashua Yahweh Shamaria Yahweh Tazalia Ayu Ya Yim Ya Yawamam Hashamash La Hakaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashamaria Makam Rai Yashamar Napasha Yahweh Yashamar Awalakya Waya My Thai will aid I will Basham Yahweh Shai for what man. Quiet everything.
Psalm 121. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper, the Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth.
Amen. Shema Yasharella, Hero Israel. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharella, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad.
Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our power is one Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abiyanawa Shabbat Shemayim Kodash Hayya Shemka Yahweh Malakwath Kad Thaba'ar Ratazawanka Hayya Aisha Baratazak Bashemayim Nathan Lanawa Lacham Yawam Zad Wasalak Lanawa Kabawat Nawa Kasalak Nawa Kabawat Yanawa Wala Abiyar Nawa Oh Nasayawan Abo Hawashinawa Murray Kaya Laka Hamalakwa Wa Allah Wa Thaparat Wa Walam Aman.
First minute, therefore, pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debt as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever.
Amen. Aishara Matazawaf, the Ten Commandments. La'ab, Yahayab, Lakab, Alahayim, Akharim, Al Panyab, La'ab, Thaishad, Lakab, Paso, Wala'ab, Thaibadam, La'ab, Talakwakaf, Shamwab, Yahawab, Alahayakab, Lashawab, Zakab, Af, Hayawam, Hashabat, Laquadashwat, Kabad, Abiyakab, Wa Amakab, La'ab, Taratazak, La'ab, Tana'ab, La'ab, Taganab, La'ab, Tainad, Shakur, La'ab, Bakhamad, Ko, Asharat, Lara'ikab, Amen.
Exodus 20:2. I am the Lord thy power, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy power in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy power. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son nor thy daughter, thy manservant nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy power giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's.
Amen. Yeshua, be seated. Barakatha Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai, Asherah, and the now Parya Gapan Dwada Aman. Yahweh by Shimi Hawashai, Af Yasher English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. And my wife, Panya Rosham, stand and face truth. Barakatha Yahweh, Haggadah, Rakawam, Abiyah, Wanawa'eh, Aliyawan, Malak, Shal, Shamayim, Warataza, Wakal, Dabaryam, Kayayam, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahawa, Arawanawa, Ahab. Palag, Yawa Aitaza, Yahawashai, Zakarnawa, Yahawa, Bartazawan, Ainka, Yashala, Zarnawa, Banai, Wasap, Yashala, Oh, Nanawa, Yam Yan, Aifa, Kayawamyam, Aquadam, Babakushai, Shalak, Mike Allah, Watazawadak. Alahayim, La Maganawa, Raparnawa, Washimab, Ilnawa, Bakwar, Shalak, Haroka, Shao, Yawashai, Lanawa, Lamanawa, Rabiam, Kakamai, Tabawana, What I Shao da Barka Basham Yahushai the Wadatham Yad Why Willam Aman. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor Yahweh Shai. Remember, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, Most High, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakatha Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Nathan Lanawa, HaTawarat, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakatha Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakatha Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherat, Nathan Lanawa, Quran, Hayo, Lakorab, Ha'aim, Yishabwa. You see that? All right, Shalom, Yasharallah.
Shalom.
Shalom, everybody that's here in Philly. Shalom, everybody watching us on live stream, and shalom, everyone listening in on teleconference. Welcome to High Yasharallah Kanas, or the Congregation of Israel, where we teach the descendants of slaves as well as the indigenous peoples found in North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean mainly, make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the 12 tribes of Israel. And that we fall into a lower state politically, economically, and religiously because we broke the laws of God found in the Bible given to us by Moses. And to come out of this lower state that we fall into as a people by turning back to these commandments we broke by following Jesus Christ. And one way we do that is by keeping the high holy days of the Most High, not the holidays of the world, or as some brothers refer to the holidays, right, of the world, the holy days of the Most High. And during this season, we keep the holy day of the Feast of Tabernacles, right, in the fall season. That's what we're keeping tonight. This is the opening of that feast, right, being that it's according to our Hebrew calendar, 7th month and the 14th day at even, which is also the 15th day. So this marks the beginning of the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Tents. Also known as you may have heard me say earlier in the prayers, Sakawaf. Sakawaf just means tents. So my name is Nabiaz Rababal. I'll be doing the service this evening. Just write down for your records, for your notes. Today, according to the Gregorian calendar, is September 30th, 2020. But according to our calendar, it's the 7th month and the 15th day. Once again, September 30th, 2020, 7th month, 15th day. You just call it the Hebrew calendar.
7 month, 15 days.
Mm-hmm. Some will call it the lunar calendar, but more specifically the Hebrew calendar. Because the way that the calendar most of us have on our phones here in the West is based on the sun, whereas our calendar is based on the moon. See, as we always read in different holy days, especially in the new moon, we read about why the new moon is important to use to know when to keep different feast days. It's like we were discussing earlier before we started. We know when to keep the Feast of Tabernacles because it comes exactly 2 weeks after the memorial blowing of trumpets. You remember 2 Wednesdays ago at sundowns when we kept the memorial blowing of trumpets. Since we know this comes 14th day at even, or the 15th day, that marks 2 weeks have gone by, right? Because 7 times 7 is 14, right? So we know whenever we keep that memorial blowing of trumpets, we know 2 weeks later is going to be the beginning of the Feast of Tabernacles, right? Since this is an 8-day feast, as we're going to read, we know the closing is going to be a week from today, Wednesday sundown next week. That's going to be the
Wednesday sundown.
That's going to be the 8th and final day of the feast. Just little things you can use as a way to remember. Mark it in your calendar as practice first, but then just to go off your head, just remember those things that can be helpful. So first, Exodus 23. Exodus 23, we'll start from verse 14. Just say "Con" once you have it. Exodus chapter 23, we're going to start from 14. So make sure you take down all these verses so that you compare them with your past notes if you kept this holy day in past time to reconcile with the notes when we kept it this time. In 14. Definitely make sure you write down the verses we go over tonight. So everybody has it written down at least, right? So Exodus chapter 23 and verse 14, it reads, 3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year. So who's speaking? The Most High. Who's he speaking to? The children of Israel. What's he saying? We shall keep a feast unto him in the year. How often? 3 times in the year. As we read on, it's going to get more specific as far as what these 3 times are, or when these 3 times are. Verse 15. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in the time appointed in the month Abib. For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. Right? So we're speaking on one time when we keep it. Thou, referring to us, shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. Right? The feast of unleavened bread. That's the feast we keep in the what we now call the spring season. It says we shall eat unleavened bread during that time for how long? 7 days. As I, the Most High, commanded thee, referring to us, in the time appointed in the month of Abib. So that's when we do it. Right? Abib, coming from the ancient Hebrew, Abiyab, meaning in the ear. Right? As far as things began to grow around that time. Like we read about in Exodus, during the time when we were coming out of Egypt, Moses was pleading with Pharaoh to what? Let our people go. And he kept getting his heart hardened by the Most High, and the Most High kept bringing more plagues to him. Right? It was around that time in the month of Abib. That's why it says, for in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. I mean, we should always have something we can offer to the Most High during these major feasts. These major times we're supposed to come together. 16. In the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors. Right? So now it's talking about the next holiday that we keep. Remember, we were talking about this in the Tuesday class, right, Yakazak? The feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, right? That's the one we keep in the summer season, right? By counting so many Sabbaths, 7 Sabbaths, right, or 7 weeks, when the wheat harvest begins. It says, in the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering. That's what we're keeping right now, right? Also known as the Feast of Tabernacles, or the Feast of Tents, which is in the end of the year. This means the end of the harvest year, right? We're only about halfway through the Hebrew year, because the Hebrew New Year won't start again until around March, April, right? The spring season. So it's talking about the end of the harvest year. So we bring in the rest of our harvest during this time. Because during past holy days, it tells you during the time of unleavened bread, barley was growing. When you read other scriptures, it tells you in the beginning, at the end of the spring, going into the summer, that's when wheat comes up and other crops like that. And during this time, we brought in other crops that remained, as well as other things we grew, like say in our gardens, where we grew vegetables, or orchards where we grew different types of fruits, right, from trees, right, as well as vineyards where we grew grapes. So we will bring these things in around this time towards the end of the harvest year. When thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field. 17. 3 times in the year shall all thy males appear before Adawan Alahaya, or Lord Power, God. So how often? 3 times. Who shall come before the Lord God? All males. Right? And it speaks on those 3 major holy days that we keep, where we're also required to come together. As you read other scriptures later on in the history, you'll read about a 4th time we come together during the winter season. Because why? We kept it the same way we kept the Feast of Ingathering. Right? We may touch on that a little bit tonight, but we'll definitely touch on it in the classes ahead when we keep our next major feast, besides the feast we're keeping right now, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, also Feast of Ingathering. You had your hand up? So Exodus 23, 14 to 17. Let's now move on to Leviticus. Let's go to Leviticus 23rd chapter. Famous chapter we find most, not all, but most of our high holy days. Leviticus chapter 23, we're going to start from 33. Let's We read out of this 2 weeks ago during the memorial blowing of trumpets. We read it out of this last Friday night. We're going through the Day of Atonement. So now, if you can read on in Leviticus 23, it talks about the next holy day that comes afterwards. In this 7th month that we're in. Leviticus chapter 23, in verse 33. And Khan Bakwa, if you could read that, Baba Kushan, once we all have it written down.
Leviticus chapter 23, verse 33. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of the 7th month shall be the feast of tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord.
Right. So the Lord, or Yahweh in the Hebrew, he spoke unto Moses, and what did he say? He told him to speak unto the children of Israel. That's us today, like we said earlier in the introduction. So-called descendants of slaves, as well as so-called indigenous peoples found throughout the Americas mainly, right? North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean. Right? Those are the 2 kingdoms that make up the 12 tribes of Israel. That's what we're known as today. So he's telling him to speak unto the children of Israel and say, the 15th day of the 7th month, when's that? Tonight, shall be the Feast of Tabernacles. That's what we're keeping. How long? For 7 days unto the Lord. Right? Read on in verse 35.
On the first day shall be an holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein.
Right, so this is the first day of the feast. It says, in the first day of the feast, we shall do no servile work therein. Right? Which could be work for hire or work around the house. Right? We're supposed to keep this day holy and not do our own work. Now, keep in mind, this is going into us being set up in our own righteousness, in our own kingdom, in our own land, right? So in the time of our captivity, we might have to apply grace, right? If we need to make money for living for ourselves and for our household. But if you're able and the Most High has blessed you, then what? Keep this day the best you can, right? Keep it holy the best you can. If you don't have to work, then don't. So the idea, like for other holy days, is to plan our lives around the Most High, not fit the Most High in where, into our schedule. We should have our schedule aligned with the Most High schedule, right? Because a lot of times you may have an attitude, well, what about me? You want to put yourself first and then say, okay, let me squeeze in time for the Most High, when it really should be the other way around. Read on in verse 36, Baba Kushan.
7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be an holy convocation unto you. And ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein.
Right. So 7 days we offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. Right? Before Christ came, right, to be that ultimate sacrifice for us as a people, we actually did the sacrifice you read about in the early chapters of Leviticus, the ones that were required. As you read on, we'll get that chapter as well, where it goes into what those were specifically, right? And it says, you shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord, or Yahweh. It is a solemn assembly, meaning what we gather together, like we're doing now. Ye shall do no servile work therein. So same thing for the 8th day we do on the first day, and vice versa. Right? That's why we mentioned next Wednesday, sundown, we'll come together again to observe this day. Read on in 37.
These are the feasts of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocation, to offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord, a burnt offering, and a meat offering, a sacrifice, a drink offering, everything upon his day.
Right. So now it's going through the overview of the things that we will offer during this feast in particular. Right? And it says we shall proclaim it to be a holy convocation or a holy gathering, a sacred gathering. We're supposed to come together in our right mind, right? And we're supposed to be clean during these days according to the laws of cleanness and uncleanness. To offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh is going into examples of things we offered. Like I said, in Numbers, which we'll touch on a little bit later, it talks about what those offerings were specifically that we offered during this day and how many we did of them. Burnt offering, meat offering, a sacrifice, and drink offerings. You find the details behind how those work or what's involved with those when you read Leviticus chapter 1 through 7, right? Those chapters focus on different types of offerings and how to do them. Numbers 28 and 29, I'm saying it now, but we're not going to get it, but we're going to get it a little bit later. Goes into how many of those offerings and which kind we did on the different holy days, like the Feast of Tabernacles. Read on in 38, Baba Kushab.
Besides the Sabbaths of the Lord, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vows, and besides all your freewill offerings, Lord.
Right. So we were supposed to do the things that were required on this day. It says, besides the Sabbaths of the Lord, we're still supposed to keep those. And besides your gifts, right? We can give those as we see fit and as we're able, right? And beside all your vows, whatever vows you may have made unto the Lord. And beside all your free will offerings, right? There's rules that go into how to do a free will offering too, which was based on us, right? Hence the name free will offering, which ye give unto Yahweh. Christ or Mashiach in the New Testament goes into the role we should have when it comes, the role that vows should play. Since we're in a time of grace now, we need to be a bit more mindful of how we do vows, right? Because we don't want to make a vow and not be able to do it, right? Everything should be according to as the Most High will, and we try our best to do it, applying the fruits of the Spirit to help us along the way. Because you make a vow with your mouth, you'll have to keep it, as we touched on in past classes. Read on in verse 39, Baba Kushab.
Also in the 15th day of the 7th month, when ye had gathered the fruit of the land, ye shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath.
Right, so just recapping what we read above. When? 15th day of the 7th month. When ye have gathered the fruit of the land, right? Hence being called the Feast of Ingathering, right? Ye, Israel, shall keep a feast unto Yahweh 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. Right? So we start today, go 7 days, and the 8th day is that final Sabbath that we keep from sundown to sundown. Read on in verse 40.
And ye shall take you on the first day the bough of goodly trees, branches of palm trees, and the bough of thick trees, and willow of the brook, and ye shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7th day.
So now it's going into something unique. Right, it's going into something unique we did during this feast of not only ingathering, but also feast of tents or tabernacles. So what is going into here is saying that what? As a custom, we should create makeshift tents or tabernacles. And he's saying to what? Use thick branches, right? Branches that won't just fall apart where the leaves come off in the fall, right? But of what we might consider evergreens, right? Those type of branches that even stay green in the wintertime. Thicker trees, right? Thicker branches. That's why it says boughs of goodly trees, branches of palm trees and boughs of thick trees and willows of the brook. And then take those and make makeshift tents or tabernacles out of them. Read on.
41. And ye shall keep it a feast unto the Lord 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generations. Ye shall celebrate it in the 7th month.
Right. So once again, reiterating, saying how long we should do it for, 7 days. It shall be a statute forever in your generations, meaning, how long do we do this? Continually. As long as we know we're Israel, right? And that we're under a covenant with the Heavenly Father, we should be doing this. As more and more of us wake up to the truth, we should be keeping this holy day. Any camp that's out there should be keeping this holy day, right? According to the time appointed, right? To the best of their ability, as the Holy Spirit has taught them things and brought these things to their remembrance. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. That's the month that one. We're doing in 42, Baba Krishan.
42. Ye shall dwell in booths ye shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelite born shall dwell in booths.
Right. So these booths is what we read in verse 40, right? These makeshift booths that we made with the thick branches or the thick boughs, or the tents. Ye shall dwell in booths 7 days. All that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths. Read on.
When
43.
43. That your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God.
Right. So that we may know throughout our generations, even now in 2020, right? So-called 2020, that the Most High made our ancestors, and even us today that are descendants of our ancestors, the children of Israel, to dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. So it should send us back, memory-wise, back to that time when the Most High brought us out of Egypt. And about, 6 months later, from the spring to the fall, the Most High had us keep this day and dwell in booths. Because as we're going to read in other scriptures, as you read in other scriptures, this is supposed to signify what? No matter where we are, right? We should always consider that we are under the shade of the Heavenly Father. That we dwell in his tabernacle always, as long as we follow his ways and are obedient unto him, right? He'll always keep us, no matter where we are, no matter where we've been scattered to. So we physically did this, but it's supposed to represent something that takes on a spiritual meaning, as does many of our laws, right? It has something that we physically execute, but it has a spiritual meaning behind it, right? Which deals with what? Us being obedient to the Most High, following his commandments. You can read 44 and then we'll finish that up.
And Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feast of the Lord. Right.
So Moses declared these feasts of the Most High unto the children of Israel. And now we're reading it today as a record. This is something that we're going to continue to do, even leading up to the time when Christ makes a second coming and going into the kingdom forward into the future. We're going to keep this holy day. So from here, let's go to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, let's go to chapter 16. And we'll start from 13 in Khan Yawa Kanan. If you can read that once everyone has it written down, we would appreciate it. 16. We're going to start from verse 13.
Deuteronomy 16, verse 13. Thou shalt observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days. After that thou hast gathered in thy corn and thy wine.
Right. So we're commanded here. We see in Deuteronomy, we always like to touch on Deuteronomy itself. Literally means second law. That's what that word means, right? Deutero meaning two. Nomi, that suffix nomi just means law. Just like you'll see words like astronomy, which means star law. Deuteronomy means second law. Because the Most High, as a good father, would repeat things to the children of Israel, right? Say things again, just to make sure we didn't forget, as a reminder. That's why you'll find many things in Deuteronomy are repeated from what was written before in Exodus and Leviticus, right?
Also, if you notice in those verses, when the Most High says it's a statute forever throughout your generation, in that you see sacrifices that we used to do, right? And today we are not doing those sacrifices. Today in this service, we're not doing those sacrifices, right? Because the sacrifice they are rituals, and rituals are temporary, right? Those are temporary rituals that we used to do because they're supposed to represent Christ. Right? Once Christ came on the scene and then we don't do those rituals anymore, but the statutes, the law of the Most High doesn't change. Right? So that's why we keep it throughout our generation. So the law doesn't change, but rituals is temporary. And the rituals that we used to do, as we had the Levi set up as the priest, that was a ritual that was temporary. Right? This is not a change to the law, it's just a ritual that was temporary, but the law remains intact forever.
Come. Absolutely. And it's heavy too, you mentioned that, because even in the law itself, it mentions that the Christ would come, right? Referring to him as a prophet that would come out of the midst of us, one from among our brethren, and unto him shall we hearken, right? So even following Christ is a part of the law that was always there, right? It just would take time before we could actually keep that law. It would take for Christ to come into earth so that we could actually follow that law that you find right here in Deuteronomy.
Verse 14, and thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant and thy maidservant and the Levite, the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are within thy gates.
Right. So it says in 14, thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, referring to us, Israel. You, your son, your daughter, if you have them, thy manservant, thy maidservant, if you have manservants and maidservants, right? It says, and the Levite, right? Because Levites were, as we read, I think in not last Tuesday, maybe 2 Tuesdays ago, we were reading about cities of refuge, reading about how the Most High, he has specific cities for Levi spread out amongst the tribes, right? Because they didn't have a plot of land to call their own, right? But they were spread out, and you had 48 cities altogether on the east and west side of Jordan, right? And then out of those 48 cities, remember 6 of them were cities of refuge. We went into that in that class. So that's where the Levites dwelt. So they were there too. It says, the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are within thy gates. So it mentions the stranger. Remember we talked about this too in the Tuesday class, where you go into, just like you see a word, say like virgin, you'll see a word like stranger where, depending on the context, it could be one type of stranger versus another type of stranger. In the Hebrew, will back it up, just like it will with a virgin being what? A woman who hasn't been betrothed to a husband, as well as a virgin, it just means a young woman. You'll see stranger in the Hebrew, one type of stranger in the Hebrew, I believe that it's Nakar, is talking about what? Those of the other nations that will be considered actual foreigners. Just like we say there's 2 types of Gentiles in the New Testament, there's 2 types of strangers along those same lines. Whereas you see the other one, which is gar in the ancient Hebrew, you look up where that Hebrew word comes up, it's specifically referring to our people that were considered strangers because why? We didn't have any claim to inheritance. We knew we came from the 12 tribes, right? We may have even known our tribe in particular, but we may have lived somewhere else. We may have come back to the land of Israel to keep a holy day, right? We really couldn't say, oh, I'm of this tribe and my family lives here in the land of Israel, right? When we look at the old maps where you see, okay, Judah's here, Simeon's here, Reuben's over here, Gad's over here, Manasseh's over here, right, et cetera, et cetera. You have that type of stranger too. So as we touched on, as we will continue to touch on, especially when we go through holy days, and just when we read through the Old Testament in general, when we have the understanding and we can, through the Spirit, read it in the proper context, we can see, oh, okay, this stranger here is talking about a foreigner, an actual Gentile, someone not of the 12 tribes, versus, oh, this stranger is just talking about one of our people, right? That wasn't tied to a particular inheritance, but we know that he or she belongs to the 12 tribes of Israel.
And also, when it says rejoice in the feast and rejoice in the Most High's statutes, we've been taught in society to fear the law of the Most High, meaning, right, to not keep the laws of the Most High because the law is bondage. Right? Or you go back to this law. So a lot of people have been paranoid when they hear about the law. But the law is there for our good. Right? The law is supposed to be our best friend. Right? And even Paul, right, when people say Paul said, we shouldn't keep the law, Paul said, we're not supposed to keep the law. Some people misunderstood Paul. I want to read 1 Timothy 1 and 8. The law is there for our protection. Right? It's as simple as that. The law is there for our protection. Without the law, in any country without laws, you have chaos. Wherever there's no law, you can be certain there's disorder going on. Right? So let me read 1 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 8. So those who said Paul said that the law is done away with, right? 1 Timothy 1 and 8 reads, but we know the law is good if a man use it lawfully. The law is good if a man uses it lawfully. I'll give a quick example. If we get to a red light, right? You stop at the red light. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? That's a good thing. It stops you from getting in an accident. Right? So you automatically stop because you're scared, you don't want to die. But the red light is there for your protection. Right? So it's the same as the law. The Most High said, don't do this. It's there for your protection, not for your not to make you a slave. Not to scare you. So if people get into the habit of jumping the red light, they become disorderly, right? Eventually, they will get into an accident because they disobey the stopping at the red light. So just a simple example. It's the same way with the law. And the Most High said, keep the laws for our protection. It's supposed to be our for our good.
Come. So it says back in 14 towards the end, as he read, the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are within thy gates, right? The fatherless and the widow, those being potentially more vulnerable, right? Because there's no head household there, right? For one reason or another. Maybe died due to illness or due to war, what have you, right? To make sure that they are part of the festivals too, and that they're accounted for, right? Because our holy days, while we're doing this for the Most High, we're doing it to the Most High, but we're doing it for one another, right? Because the Most High created these holy days to benefit us as a people, and for us to what? Show love toward one another, especially those of us that need help, right? So that's what these holy days oftentimes would reinforce. Like we talked about with the first fruits, right? When we talked about gleaning the edges of the field, right? Those are for those who are like strangers, we said before, the widows and the fatherless, those that may not have enough. Your excess should go to those of your people who may be without for one reason or another. So we see here in the law, it's keeping that in mind as well. So we can read on in 15.
Deuteronomy 16, verse 15. 7 days shalt thou keep a solemn feast unto the Lord thy God in the place which the Lord shall choose, because the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thine increase and in all the works of thine hands. Therefore thou shalt surely rejoice.
Right, so as you read in Leviticus, we see it here as well. How long? 7 days we shall keep a solemn feast unto Yahweh, where in the place which Yahweh shall choose, right? We know at that time we were still in the wilderness. And then later on, like we're reading in Joshua, that would become Jerusalem where we will build a temple. But now since we've been scattered due to our transgression as a nation, it's scattered throughout the four corners, especially here in the western part of the world. Mainly we found our people in the Americas, but not just here, but all over. The Most High, through the Spirit, as He wakes us up, He'll inspire different camps of our people that wake up to keep it in certain locations, right? So wherever the Most High shall choose is a bit more flexible now, just given the case that we're in captivity. We're still commanded to keep it. Why? Because the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thine increase. Whatever you increase, right? Literally, we look at increase as far as, in the field, right? Working in the field and what grows based on the work you do in the field. Or if you have a pasture, as far as the increase of your cattle or lamb, right? We can even see this now as far as increase for jobs we may work, right? Whether it be a factory job or a corporate job, blue collar, white collar, doesn't matter. Or if we work for ourselves, if we're self-employed, right, et cetera, whatever our increase is. And in all the works of thine hands, right, so that covers that. Therefore, thou shalt surely rejoice. So we should rejoice during this time of this feast.
And also, we got to take a look at those things that we bring in, the offerings, the free will offerings, the gifts that we bring. It's sort of like investments, right? Investment. But when you bring tithe, it's a whole different thing. That's why there's a difference between tithes and offerings, right? Mm-hmm. Tithes is pretty much to take care of the things in the church. It's like a tax, right? So that has no return on that. But when we bring offerings and free will offering, it's like an investment in the future, right? So let's go to, let me read one scripture to go Bible shot. Ecclesiasticus 11:1.
So real quick, Ecclesiasticus, where is it? Where's Ecclesiasticus?
Actually, Ecclesiastes, sorry.
Where is Ecclesiastes? Ecclesiastes, is it here?
No.
Or in 66 books? Where is it? Come to what? Mawak is correct. Ecclesiastes is there. Ecclesiasticus.
Right, so like I said, like tithes is for the present. Gifts and free will offerings you bring is for the future, right? It says, chapter 11 in Ecclesiastes, it says, cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days.
I like that. It's like it's kind of like Galatians 6 and 7, right, Khan? Or like the reverse. Usually you think of Galatians 6 and 7, it usually comes from like the negative aspect, like you did something wrong. It's saying, look, you did something right, like you said. You put money out to help or to aid someone or to develop something, you know, that help you put out will come back to you.
Right.
Eventually.
Waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. It's like when you invest, you don't get it right away, but you will get it later on. Right. It's because you don't know, you put something now, right? But you will get the benefit later on. Right? And maybe not from the same person, but the Most High will have it where the laws of the Most High set up where when you invest righteously, you will reap the benefit, you know, later on. Right? Right, because whatever the Most High set up, the Most High puts a law in it. That's why if the Most High had to put everything that he creates, he had to explain a law. There would not be a book, right, to put all the law. Because everything the Most High created, he puts a law in it for it to function.
So you said the offering is an investment?
The offering is sort of like an investment for the future. When I say investment, not tangible investment, right? You could invest and then you looking for something, and later on it could be something in the fruit of the spirit, right? But don't look at for money, right? Because you don't know where you're gonna get it and who's gonna give it back. But you know you do something good because you know the Most High bless you and you do something good with it. You bring something, you know, extra from the blessing that the Most High gives you. And the Most High will see that you're diligent with what He gives you. You know who gave it to you, because by giving it, you already acknowledge that, you know, you're working for the Most High. You're a servant of the Most High.
Come. It's beautiful the way Solomon illustrated that, you know, using that, you know, physical metaphor as far as you putting the bottle out there in the water and the tide eventually will bring it back in.
Right.
Because you know, you've probably observed that if you live, you know, by the coast. Just know about it just through knowledge. So it's like, think about that, like you said, those spiritual things. When you sow those spiritual things, you'll reap those spiritual things in time, in due time.
And I'll give you a simple example, right? One simple example. For example, some things are obvious, right? In the law the Most High put a law in the seed, right? When you plant a seed, you don't have to stress yourself whether that is gonna grow. So long you follow the soil, it's fertile for that soil, right? You put it in there, you can go to sleep. You're not gonna know exactly what's going on under the ground, but eventually it's gonna grow. But it doesn't grow tomorrow, but you know it's working. Because the law the Most High has put in it, it's gonna observe the law of growth in the seed gonna grow. Right? But certain things, you don't know the ends of it, it takes longer. Right? But all in all, there's a law of the Most High in everything.
Eventually it's going to grow.
Right, eventually it's gonna grow.
You have faith.
Right. I mean, it's gonna grow regardless because in the seed is designed by the Most High's law to grow. Right, so it's gonna observe the law of growth because that's what the seed is for. The Most High put it in it.
Yeah.
Right, so you don't have to stress yourself whether or not it's gonna grow because based on the Most High creation, that's what the seed's supposed to be doing.
They don't always work out.
Right, like I said, if you follow the process, the seed's supposed to grow in this soil. You put it in the right soil, it's gonna grow. But if you put it in stony ground, it's not gonna grow. Right?
Right.
You see what he did there, right? He went to the parable of the sower and the seed, right? So you can understand.
Right.
Okay. So you can read on Kanyal Kanan in 16.
Deuteronomy 16:16. 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty.
Right. So once again, said a second time, right? Deuteronomy, second law, said again. We read this in Exodus 23, right? How often? 3 times in a year. Who? All thy males. What should they do? Appear before Yahweh thy power. Where? In the place which he shall choose. When? Feast of Unleavened Bread in the spring. Feast of Weeks in the summer. Feast of Tabernacles right now in the fall, right? And it says, and they shall not appear before Yahweh empty. So that's something that you can offer unto the Most High during the times of these feast days. These are things that the Most High requires of us, right? We have eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart to understand. We should be keeping these things to the best of our ability. Even if we're far away, we can still keep it if we're not able to travel to link up with other brothers and sisters, right? We have different means to do so, whether it be over the phone or over the live stream like we're doing now, right? So Mosiah is just telling us again. And then 17 is important too. Go ahead and read that, Baba Busha.
Deuteronomy 16, verse 17. Every man shall give as he is able, according to the blessing of the Lord thy God, which he had given thee.
Right. So every man that's required to come shall give as he is able. So you don't appear empty, but at the same time, give as you're able. Don't overdo it, right? To where now you've given for the feast, and now you can't feed yourself or clothe yourself, right? Or you're out of your shelter now because, whatever domicile you have because you've given so much. I see your hand. I always think of the counsel that John the Baptist gave in Luke, where the people asked him, well, what should we do? Right? Because he was, getting them ready for Christ. He said, for the man that had 2 coats, give to your brother that have no coat. He didn't say for the man that had 1 coat, give to your brother that have 1 coat. Give your coat to your brother that has no coat. Because if you only got 1 coat and you give that coat to your brother, now you're just like your brother now. Now you're looking around like, I need a coat now. So he said, for the man that had 2 coats, for the brother that doesn't have any, give your 1 coat to your brother. Now both of you have coats. But don't give your only coat. So it makes sense here what he was saying. Give as ye are able, according to the blessing of Most High, which have given you. Speaking what you were touching on earlier, Kambakwad, about the tithe and the offering, the importance of the tithe, right? We need to look at this wisdom of the Most High as timeless. It's not what they say in the world, oh, you guys are reading up that Bible, or you guys are going back to biblical days. That's how they did things back in biblical times, right? So the wisdom of the Most High is timeless. You can use it anytime, then, now, and tomorrow. Just looking at the tithe concept by itself, I won't spend too much time on it, I want to make sure we go through the scriptures, but just looking at the concept of the tithe, think of how much good it would do right now in this wicked Babylon the Great that we're in now. If the government actually just had this from the top on down, everyone's required to pay at least 1/10. And that includes corporations, which we know according to the Constitution are considered like a person. Right? Say everyone had to pay 1/10. And that 1/10 will go to your municipal, your state, your government, wherever you reside. Think about how many programs could be funded, right? How much infrastructure could be assisted. The healthcare issue, wouldn't be the kind of issue that it is now. Not to say that the other wickedness wouldn't hurt it, because of course it would. It's just something as small as everyone paying 1/10, regardless of who you are. Who would be mad about it, right? From the blue collar worker all the way to the person, on Wall Street, that's got, all types of assets. 1/10 from everybody. How could that service the debt that they're always talking about? Or different programs that could actually help the people out, the same people that work for these big corporations. It's a small thing, but it goes a long way. You could be mad if it's just 1/10. Everyone's required 1/10.
On top of what you said, it's like the Most High already know what he blesses you.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what you got. He knows what you have. So why would he knows what you have and he asks you to give as if he doesn't know what you have? Mm-hmm. He wants to see if by you not seeing him physically, you're going to follow the law. You're going to do it. Right? Because he knows. He knows how much he blesses you with, what can you afford and what you cannot afford. He sees it. But without him being there physically, you can see him. Now you have to hold yourself accountable, like accountability. Can you be accountable? Can you be trustworthy? Right? To give it without somebody also sees every action that you're taking, then you will be blessed with more because now you're a good servant. You can manage what he gives you, right? And you understand as soon as you get what you get, you take off the 10th, Musa comes to head, comes to mind. So you know who's the owner. Right? You know who everything belongs to. By doing that, you remove yourself from thinking that everything is yours. Right? So that's pretty much what he does. He keeps you accountable, keeps you responsible, right? And trustworthy. All that for the spirit start to build in you. So now the most I won't have any problem, give you tens of thousands of dollars because you already know what you're gonna do with it. It's gonna be well managed.
Absolutely. I see another hand up. So we could stop there in Deuteronomy 16. We read down to 17. Yeah, now I think we talked about that too. Like, was it 2016 campaign time? And I think it was, what's his name? Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson. I'm not sure if it was him or if it was the late Herman Cain. It was one of the Israelite brothers, not Israelite as far as nation, but Roman by behavior, running for the presidency. And I remember I was part of their campaign. They said, if it was good for God, why can't it be good for government? 10%. People kind of looked at it and kind of did their face like, this guy talking about he's crazy, right? But it's like, hey, think about it. He's got a point. I know this is this is your expertise, where you see how these major corporations, the tax code is written in a way to where the more that you have, the less you have to pay. To where if you're up there, way up there, you got your foundation here, but this is founded in this country, this is founded in this island, this is founded in this place in Europe. You can escape tax liability altogether. It's like, imagine those major guys were just paying a tenth too. What that money could go towards. But he said, nah, we're not doing it like that. But hey, you reap what you sow, right? I think we're witnessing it right now, right? And the scriptures talk about this as far as as the man of a ruler is, so are his officers, right? If you got corruption at the top, it's going to filter on down. And after enough time, it's going to become untenable. So next verse, let's go to our forefather Solomon. He kept this. Just a quick shot, but 2 Chronicles chapter 8. Second Chronicles chapter 8. We'll read 12 and 13. And Kahan Ariak Chazak. You can read that, Bubba Kushan. 2 Chronicles 8, 12 to 13, once everyone has it written down. We would appreciate it. So 2 Chronicles chapter 8, 12 to 13.
2 Chronicles chapter 8, verse 12. Then Solomon offered burnt offerings unto the Lord on the altar of the Lord, which he had built before the porch. Verse 13, even after a certain rate every day, offering according to the commandment of Moses on the Sabbaths and on the new moons and on the solemn feast 3 times in a year, even in the feast of unleavened bread and in the Feast of Weeks, and in the Feast of Tabernacles.
So we see Solomon, right? One of our greatest kings, following the blueprint, right? The same blueprint we read about, we've been reading about in the first 5 books, right? Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy. We see him doing it the same way, right? When we're not so much in the wilderness, but now we were in the land and establishing Jerusalem as our capital city, and then we built the temple in a similar fashion as to the tabernacle, the congregation that we had before. Now he's setting up those same offerings there, the burnt offerings before the altar of Yahweh, which he had built before the porch, right? The temple had a porch, whereas we just had a place we stood when we had the tabernacle, right? Which you pass the outer court, then the inner court when you first walk up. Then you get to the altar burnt offering, which is where Aaron and his sons were at, right? And that was the in between, because that was as far as common Israel would go, right, to bring their offerings. It would stop right there. Only the priests could go any point beyond that. Anything beyond the altar burnt offering was going into the tent, which was the holy place. Only Aaron's son could go in there. We could go to the altar burnt offering. That's as far as we could go. Exactly. So we had a similar setup here as far as going into the porch. But we couldn't go inside the holy place in the temple. Only the sons of Aaron could be there. Look at when they did this. Look at when they kept it. Certain rate every day they offered according to the commandment of Moses when? On the Sabbaths, on the new moons, solemn feasts, 3 times in a year, like we've been reading. Feast of Unleavened Bread in the spring, Feast of Weeks in the summer, Feast of Tabernacles, what we're keeping right now in the wintertime. See that? So they kept it during this time. Now there came a time when we fell away for a little bit, right? The Most High punished us for not keeping his commandments. He allowed us to go into captivity. Then he allowed us to come back in during the time of the Babylonians being the top empire, followed up by the Persians and the Medes to take the top spot after them. We had to be in captivity for a 70-year period, right? Due to our disobedience. And as we were allowed to go back in, we made sure to set this up again. Do you want to bring out something before we read this?
Hebrews, I wanted to bring a couple of scripture.
Okay.
That was Hebrews 10:1. Even though we see Solomon keep it and keep it to the best of his ability, as perfect as he can keep it, and it was the law, right? It was the law. Even though, let's go to Hebrews first. 10:1. So when it comes to the laws of the Most High, if the Most High said to keep it exactly how he says to keep it, that's how it should be kept. But yet, it wasn't the real thing, right? It was just a shadow of things to come. Hebrews 10:1. Hebrews 10:1 read, for the law, meaning the law of the sacrifice, right? That we used to keep, right? For the law having a shadow of good things to come, right? And not the very image of the things, can never with those sacrifice, which they offer year by year, continually make the comer thereunto perfect, even though they keep it perfect, right? And then Yahushua would come, right? And that would be it.
Khan, Tawa, reminiscent of what Khan Samak was touching on during Day of Atonement. The veil in the temple, right? Being torn. It's like this got you there, but now let's take it to the next step.
Right. And this is the law that Paul was talking about, that, you know, the rituals that we used to do. And people confuse it and say, we ain't got to keep the law.
So another hand up? Or? So from here, as I was touching on, us going back into the land, right? The time of the exile, as the scholars call it, Nehemiah. Actually, let's get the one in Ezra, and then we'll get the one in Nehemiah. They kind of go together. Since Ezra and Nehemiah were contemporaries of each other, them being chief leaders of ours that brought the exiles, those of us that were kicked out of Israel during the Babylonian captivity, those that led us back into the land after the 70 years was complete. We had to be exiled from our homeland. So Ezra chapter 3. Now question, Ezra, where's Ezra? Not Esdras, but Ezra. Because we know Esdras is here, but now where's Ezra? Same brother, but just a different spelling.
Where's Ezra?
Just Ezra, no first or second Esdras, just Ezra.
What was Z? Why you do it? Why you hold that?
Trying to help him out. So we know Esdras spelled that way, right? Esdras is in here. But Ezra is in the 66 books.
That's why I said why you hold that.
I know, yeah. I spoiled it. I spoiled it. I mix it up?
Yeah, no, when you put that, everybody's, oh yeah, it's in this one.
That's funny. The Hebrew portraying a fake Hebrew, right? To America. Anyway. So Ezra in the 66 books, chapter 3. We're going to start from 1 and go down to 7. So you had that written down, just say come. Chapter 3. We're going to start from 1. I don't know, you tell me, brother. Old school, new school, right? Let's get the old school, new school. God forbid we have internet goes down or power outage, right? And we have to go old school. Lantern with the torch here. So the water for that assist. If you could read that Bathat Mawak since you if you could read that for us nice and loud, Baba Kushai, we'd appreciate it. Start from 1.
Chapter 3, verse 1. In the 7th month was to come, and the children of Israel were in the city. The people gathered themselves together as one man in Jerusalem.
Right. So the 7th month was come at this time, right? When they were going back. People were going back to Israel after being under the Babylonians and the Persians and the Medes. It says the people gathered themselves together as one man, right? Like we say that word unison. We did it in unison, right? Same idea. To Jerusalem. So we're going back to the city that was destroyed by our enemies. Now the Most High in His mercies allowed us to come back into the land.
I just want to touch on quickly on as one man, right? The
Trinity God as one man? What makes them God as one man?
You don't have the same mindset.
Yeah, the law.
Mm-hmm.
The law. The law made them one man because, like the scripture says, can two work together on unless they be agreed?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was in the agreement to the law.
Okay. A carnal example would be like seeing a dance troupe, in a competition. You see them all move together in lockstep. It's like, wow, coordinated. You see an army marching in formation. You say, wow, look at that coordination. Look at that. Wow. There you go.
Laws is what makes a community works. When everybody agree to follow the same rules.
Getting, as you say now, it's always been there, but it's become more popular now with these black empowerment groups. You hear them all talking about getting on code.
Right.
We got to get on code, right? Then you mention the Bible, they go, "Oh, that's the white man's book." Don't you realize this is the code right here? You're looking at it. All they gave you was what? You got the curse of Ham, which we know it's not even talking about us. We're not Hamites. And they say servants obey your masters, which was talking about the church, wasn't even talking about slavery. So when people say, "Oh, that's the white man's book," that's all they use. And both those things they used on us in slavery times, they were both misinterpretations. What about the rest of the book? What about the fact that they themselves, their characteristics, their rise and their fall, how they would go about doing things before they even did it? If this is their book, how come they didn't change it? How come they didn't go against it? Why are they following the Most High script to a T? This is their book. This is the so-called white man's book. You guys already know the examples. I don't have to go into them. So these are things you can push back on our people with when they want to put the Bible in solely a religious category. Which, yeah, the Bible does deal with how to serve God. But the Bible deals with everything. Not only that, but economics, like we were talking about before, how to deal when it comes to business transactions. It deals with politics, policy, right? Social aspects, right? There's all different ways that the Bible shows us the best way to go. So when I talk about it being, when you mention the Bible, people say, "Oh, I don't want to get into religion. I don't want to get into religion." You already know that they're looking at the Bible through a narrow lens that their oppressor gave them. When the laws of the Bible cover religious, economic, and political, all three in a concise, perfect package. So as one man to Jerusalem, read on into, brother. You read verse 1, so read verse 2 now.
2. Then he stood up to Legion.
That's Jeshua.
Then he stood up to Jeshua, the son of Zadok.
That's Josadak.
Josadak, his brother and the priest. Zebarel, the son of Shettiti.
That's Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel.
Zerubbabel,
Mm-hmm.
Zerubbabel, the son of Shettiti, and his brother built the altar of God in Israel, to offer burnt offering thereon, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of God.
Right. So these men at this time were chief men of. One came from the line of kings, right, from David. The other man came from the line of Aaron, the priest, right? Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, came from that line of Judah, which you'll see his name mentioned in Matthew chapter 1, when it does the lineage from Abraham all the way down to Christ. You'll see him mentioned. Yo, my man, Shell TT.
Hey, who said that?
Or you'll say, that's not it. Right, so Jeshua, son of Josadak, he came out of the line of Aaron, and Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, came out of the line of David. It says they built the altar of the God of Israel to offer burnt offerings thereon. So the altar of burnt offering. So it's talking about that offering in particular. It says, as is written in the law of Moses, the man of God, right? Like we were talking about, Kahan, the code, right? This is the format that they based it on. So read on in verse 3, Baba Kushah.
Chapter 3, verse 3. And they set the altar upon his bases. For fear was upon them because of the people. Chapter 3. And they set the altar upon his bases, for fear was upon them because of the people, those poetry, and they offer burnt offering thereunto the Lord, even burnt offering morning and evening.
Right, so they're following the code of the Most High, the code of Israel, the law of Moses, really the law of the Most High, Moses being the one that wrote it down. It says, they set the altar up on its base, for fear was upon them because of the people of those countries. So that was part of also what it says in the law. Most High says, we follow Most High's commandments. He'll put the fear and dread of other nations to not try to molest us, right? They'll leave us alone. They'll let us do our thing. He might let them come in and try to hinder things as like a means of temptation. But in the end, as long as we stay the course, we'll be successful, no matter how long it takes. But the minute that we give up hope on the Most High, that's when it's just like, now it's just a gamble. You know? Right. You know, you might win here and there, but it's going to come a time when you'll definitely lose. You're going to crash and burn if you're not dealing with the Most High's law first. And it says, and they offered burnt offerings thereon unto the Lord, burnt offerings morning and evening, because you go into the law, it tells you what? We had a morning and an evening burnt offering that we did, that the priests always did, right? Every day. Remember, we had offerings we did every holy day, but then even daily, they had a morning and evening burnt offering. So it's like, you know, for Israel to be set up the right way, like we had to have a lot of organization, a lot of coordination, to where you had to have a lamb coming from somewhere, right? To go to Jerusalem so that the priest could offer it, right? Somebody had to have a lamb, and it couldn't just be any lamb. It had to be a lamb without spot or blemish. Yahweh Shai Mashiach, right? Him symbolically being that lamb without spot or blemish to be sacrificed on our behalf. So that when we do sin or transgress, we have a chance at what? Mercy. To try again. It says in verse 4, read on in verse 4.
Verse 4. They kept also the feast of the tabernacle, as it is written. And offered the yearly burnt offering by numbers, according to the custom, to the duties of every day required.
Right. So they kept the tabernacles as it is written, just like we're doing now, right? And offered the daily burnt offerings by number, like we touched on already, according to the custom as is written in the law, as the duty of every day required. Read on in 5.
5. And afterward offered the continuous burning offering, both of the new moon and all the set feasts of the Lord were consecrated, and every one that willingly offered a fee will offer unto the Lord.
Right. So they continued that continual burnt offering. They did it on the new moons as was required according to the law, and on all the set feasts that we're keeping now, tabernacles as an example, that were consecrated or made holy, right? Everyone that willingly offered a free will offering unto Yahweh, like Khan was talking about earlier, as far as it being like an investment, right? Something you do willingly unto the Lord. It's not something that's required, right? Like we learned this as kids, right? Where your parents have certain things that they require of you, right, as far as your chores. But then you may do your chores, but then say you might put a little, so to speak, a little icing on top of the cake, right? Let me do this. I know Dad and Mom didn't ask me. Let me do this on top of what they asked me to do. And they come home and they see that the job that you did and you went above and beyond. They go, Right, you could double allowance, or that class trip you wanted to go on. Okay, I'm gonna let you go on it. Good job. At least, hopefully. But that's the idea. So that's where the free will offerings come in, to where it's like it's up to us, because the Most High has a lot of things where it's like I require this specifically, but this other part here, I'm gonna leave this to you. I'm gonna let you decide how much you want to give in this regard. And when you do give above and beyond, here's the way to do it. So the Most High gave us that option. It's kind of going to what we were talking about before, as far as the, I think it was the class we were talking about it, the difference between attrition versus contrition, being attrite versus contrite, right? We looked at those definitions where one is like, okay, you're doing the right thing out of fear of punishment, right? I'm doing the right thing because I don't want to get in trouble, right? I don't want to get, torched, or I don't want to get afflicted. So Most High did this, versus doing what he said out of love, out of a sense of duty, because it's the right thing to do, right? Even to where you get so mature, you're not even looking for the give back. You're just happy to see your brother or sister better off because of something you did for them. Like when you get to that place in your spirit, you're not even just looking for like, okay, I did this good thing for my brother or sister. What's up? Like you do it and you're happy to see your brother or sister better off because of something that you had that you were able to impart to him or her. The Most High sees that and he's like, here we go. He gets it. She gets it. Add unto him. Add unto her. Give him or her the increase. They get it. And it's not like they're strangled. They're not struggling to do it. It's not like, I don't want to give my, I got extra. I don't want to hold on to it. You're giving it woefully. That's what the Most High is looking for us.
You gotta see when you're doing a free will offering, right? It doesn't have to be exactly money. Most High can bless you with other things, and you get creative with it. And you're more happy with what you're doing because you're using the excess or resource you have and put it to good use, like you're saying, right? In a creative way, Most High see that you're using his resources, in a creative way, and you're happy with what you're doing. So there you go, right there.
Well put. So let's continue on in verse 6, right?
Yeah. From the first day of the 7th month, began they burn offering unto the Lord, and the foundation of the temple of the Lord was not yet laid.
Right. So they were newly getting back, but at this point, even though they were doing the offerings, they hadn't laid the foundation of the temple yet. So they had the tools, but they didn't have the building as of yet. They still said, okay, it's that time of year. Let's still do what we can with what we have. Right? And when it comes to that, we'll work on that as we go, as we rebuild the temple and get ourselves situated again. So something that's not necessarily explicit, something that's kind of implicit there, as far as oh wow, I see. So they didn't just say, oh, temple's gone, so no, they still did what they could because they still had the altar burnt offering. So they still do that. And as the Most High's mercy allows, he'll add unto us to where we can then build the foundation of the temple and get things back where they used to be.
Kind of like whatever situation you're in, don't look at what you don't have at the moment. Just use what you have to the best, right? And squeeze it out as creative as you possibly can. So whenever you get the good things, now it's even better.
Right.
Come. We do this all the time in the world for carnal reasons, right? Make $1 out of 15 cents, right? Hustle with with barely nothing, right? Make something out of nothing. When it comes to the Most High, I don't know. We get amnesia, right? How's that word? 7, and then we'll go to Nehemiah.
7. They gave money unto the masons.
Also.
They gave money also into the masons, and to the carpenters, and to the meats, and drink, and all into them in Zidon, and to them of Tyre, to bring cedar tree from Lebanon to the sea of
Joppa.
Joppa, according to the grain that they had Cyrus the king of
Persia.
Persia.
Right. So very similar to when we first built it under Solomon, right? Those same ties we had with Tyre and Zidon, those things were established again, right? To get those cedar trees of Lebanon, right? Because, Israel's a chosen land, but Most High gave the other nations certain things. Like Lebanon, you'll see it spelled Libanus in other places, referring to the same place. They were known for their tall cedar trees, right? Because the quality of the wood was very good. You look up cedar trees, they got up to 50, sometimes 60 feet high, right? And they grew fully. So cedar trees from Lebanon to the Sea of Joppa, where they used to they transported it by boats, right, along the seacoast, and then brought them back on the shore. According to the grant that they had of Cyrus, king of Persia, because the Most High, remember, he could control the hearts and minds of the king. So he did that for Cyrus, to where he changed his heart and his mind, because Israel were coming back to the Lord. So the Most High said, okay, I'm going to not harden his heart, but I'm going to unharden his heart, to where he's going to provide you things so that you can establish the city again. And most of it was stuff that was ours anyway, because Babylonians took it. Babylonians were wicked. They lost to the Persians. The Persians took them out, took what they had, which was ours anyway. And now we're getting it back through Cyrus, because the Most High showing mercy towards us.
It's just like every nation, is the Most High's creation, right? They live too on the earth, right? Except that the Most High chose Israel among the nations as his model nation, as a chosen nation. So that we should be the one teaching and be the example, so that everybody else should follow. I mean, to be honest, everybody should be keeping the law.
Exactly. Can't say it enough. Come.
Israel is the model nation.
Come. We're the, to put it another way, we're like the center of gravity, right? Within the world body. And even looking at it from a carnal perspective, you guys were talking about it as far as like, I wonder how Israel will look in the kingdom, right? We know Israel was we know what was definitely Israel, as far as how far the garden spread originally, it's tough to say how far up and how far northeast it went and how southwest it went, right? But just where we're situated, even physically on a map, everything revolves around us. We see how it revolves around us, even in our captivity, culture-wise, here in the Western Hemisphere, right? Everyone wants to walk, talk, sing, dance, dress like us, right? Learn from us. Even where our land is at, and when you look at other places, they're all labeled based on where Israel is, right? You got the Middle East, the Far East, right? The West. Remember, as kids, we took geography as kids. It's like, why is Europe called the West? That's the East, right? Because you're thinking about it from, okay, I'm on the East Coast of America. Why is that called the West? It's still called the West because it's all based on where Israel was at, which is right in the middle, right? So the Middle East, which is right there, the Far East further east. You had the Western countries, which started with Europe, and then you go further west out to where we're at in the Americas. So even physically, as far as where the lands are situated, the Most High has us right there in the middle. Everybody else around us. So even that has wisdom behind it. But of course, like you were going into, it goes deeper as far as who we are and who we are being fully manifested through the commandments. Right? That's what really makes us the center of gravity, not just where we're at in the earth. And I always make that joke when we see Masons here. For those who have crossed the burning sands or know about that, this is talking about speculative masonry. It's talking about operative masonry, not speculative. I always make that joke when Khan Yashamai is on the second, because he knows a thing or two. So I'll say, operative, not speculative, you'll kind of, laugh like, you know. So exactly. You got another doctrine, right? Okay, so, okay. See that, brother? See you in that Bible, see, you got to go over to where we're at. We knew about that before, you know. Start going into, the Bible. See, look at the chapter and the numbers. See the verse? See? Chapter 3, verse 7. See that, brother? 3, 7. Mm-hmm. See? We knew this first. Mathematics. Exactly. That's mathematics. Goes back to Egypt, brother. It's like, no. The law is its own system. These other systems try to be like the Most High system. This is the standard. Right, so let's go to 11:15. Let's go to this swiftly, but let's go to Numbers 29. Let's read the offerings that we did during this time. And then we'll get a couple prophecies for keeping the Feast of Tabernacles. Let's go to Numbers 29. Let's start from 12. We'll go through it swiftly. So if Khan Samak, if you'd be so kind as to read for us. Once everyone has that written down, we would appreciate it. Actually, you know what? Before we go there, I'll read Numbers. If you could, Kahan Samat, read Nehemiah chapter 8. Let's get that first. Nehemiah chapter 8. Start from 13, Baba Kushan. Then I'll go to Numbers. So remember, Nehemiah is after Chronicles, before Psalms. If you close the book. And it's the book next to Ezra, if you didn't leave Ezra. If you shut your book, just remember it's after Chronicles and before Job. You can say Job. It's easy to miss. Ezra and Nehemiah can be somewhat elusive, right?
This is Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 13. And on the second day were gathered together the chief of the fathers of all the people, the priests and the Levites, unto Ezra the scribe, even to understand the words of the law.
Right, so it says the second day of that month, they were all gathered together. Who was gathered? The chief of the fathers of all the people, right? So the heads of all the different tribes as we're coming back into the land. It says the priests, which we know the sons of Aaron, and the Levites, all the other families of Aaron, because they had duties too, unto Ezra the scribe. You go into Ezra, he was like a high priest, if you will. If you go into his lineage, you read in these books, Ezra and Nehemiah, it shows he came out of the line of Aaron. You go into it on his father's side. It says even to understand the words of the law, right? So they were coming to him for understanding because we had been away for a while. Right? We were hanging out in Babylon, Persians and the Medes. Those heathens, they don't push the laws, right? We had to make sure we kept them ourselves. A lot of us, we forgot some things. Then we're going back. Men like Ezra, men like Nehemiah made sure, okay, here's the reason why we got kicked out in the first place. Let's make sure when we get back, we stay. How do we stay? We got to start doing what we stopped doing it right.
And we forget the law, right? And we got to understand it. Because after Adam, the spirit was gone. So now we have to be taught it all over again. Every time, that's why we have to do things to remind us of the law. We have fringes, do all these things to keep reminding us of the law because it's not in our head anymore. Yeah. Right? So the prophecy has it where when we have it, we're going to have it in our minds. We're not going to have to be taught, just like it was originally. Right? So now we gotta learn it again. It wasn't intended for us to be walking models and walking law, right? So we wouldn't have to have like just like an example we gave earlier. We would need a red light on every corner. We would know to stop automatically. Right now, you gotta have a stop sign. You gotta have a red. You would know to stop without having those. We will be like walking. Now we gotta be taught.
Nakedness exposed, right? At least he gave us what was it? Aprons of fig leaves, right? That was like what we're reading here. You know, the commandments. Like, okay, I'm not just gonna have you totally out there. Give you a little something to cover up with. It's not gonna be like what you had before, where you were fully clothed with my righteousness. Now you're just totally exposed. Now you have to go about it this way. You have to die. I still can't imagine. Just thinking about, like you said, going back to Adam in that time, living to be almost a millennia year old, like 900 something. You know, read that, we're just like, you know, the so-called scholars that read that and they go, oh, they told time, you know, different back then. It's like, no, but they were alive that long.
And that's funny. People will say, "Oh, Adam didn't have the law." Yeah, he had the law. It was written in his mind.
Mm-hmm. Breath of life.
Verse 14. And they found written in the law which the Lord had commanded by Moses, that the children of Israel should dwell in booths in the feast of the 7th month.
Right. So what we're keeping right now, when he was going through the law, he found where it was written that the children of Israel should dwell in booths. They were reading through Leviticus, Exodus, right? Same things we're reading tonight. They should dwell in booths in the feast of the 7th month. Another example of this feast being called in a different name, feast of the 7th month. We always do a little trivia, like what are the different names different things that this holy day goes by in the scriptures? So, you know, it's called the feast of the 7th month also. Here's the verse to show it. You can read on.
Verse 15. And that they should publish and proclaim in all their cities and in Jerusalem, saying, Go forth unto the mount, and fetch olive branches, and pine branches, and myrtle branches, and palm branches, and branches of thick trees, to make booths, as it is written.
Right, so we read before, get those thick branches to make those makeshift booths, or tabernacles, or tents. In the ancient Hebrew, sakawah, tents. That's what you'll see. There was even a place, I think, when we were traveling in the wilderness, we named it Succoth. You'll see it in English, Succoth. S-U-C-C, I think O-T-H. I forget where it's at, but that English word, Succoth, is based on the Hebrew sakawah, which just means tents.
Verse 16. So the people went forth and brought them, and made themselves booths, every one upon the roof of his house, and in their courts, and in the courts of the house of God, and in the streets of the water gate, and in the streets of the gate of Ephraim.
Right, so they did them outdoors, right? I remember the way we built our house, you look at the old archaeology, we had our houses where they had roofs, right? You could reside on the roof. It wasn't like, you know, you sometimes see now with roofs. Some roofs you can be on too. A lot of roofs you see, especially as you go into like the suburbs, you know, it's like slanted, you know, you got the, what do you call it, shingles, you know, and it's like on an angle. Right? You can't really, you want to sit up on a roof like that, right? Might be a little tricky.
Like on an angle.
Exactly. As opposed to a flat roof, we could actually dwell on. So they would sometimes put make their booth on top of their roof. So it says on the roof of their house, and in their courts, in the courts of the house of God, and even on the street too, right? Because you read in the law, it shows you that we had roofs that we could dwell on. The Most High can put that in the law. He said, if you have a roof, make sure you put a battlement around the edge. That's in the law, right? It's like, put a battlement around the edge so that, you know, you're not on the roof just walking, not paying attention. Especially if you got little ones, you know. And like the mental image I think of, like if you're in a city, you know, you might see a certain cities in the inner city where like an old like brick school at different levels. Down the top, you might have a playground. Sometimes, depending on like if there's not enough space on the ground. Sometimes certain schools in the city have a playground on the roof. What do you notice? You know, it's like a fence that kind of goes all the way around like a cage, go around the entire playground. It's on the roof of that school, so the kids don't, throw a ball over the edge and cause an accident or something. So the gate will block it so that you can't fall off. So we dwelt on the roofs, and during this time on the roof, we made booths. I'm not gonna say it. Bars. Stupid. Say what? Right. Kind of exactly. That's what Esau would do, right? Right. So we would set those booths up in those different places. You can read on in 17.
Verse 17. And all the congregation of them that were come again out of the captivity made booths and sat under the booths. But since the days of Jeshua the son of Nun, unto that day had not the children of Israel done so. There was very great gladness.
Right. So they didn't celebrate it like this since the times of Jeshua son of Nun, which is just another spelling for Joshua, right? Which we're reading about in the Sabbath service, right? Going through the beginning of Joshua, us establishing Canaan to make it ours and rename it Israel. So they hadn't done it up like they did since those times. This is a grand occasion, right? Time for rejoicing. Because during the times of Joshua son of Nun, those were good times, right? Those were when we were at our best, right? When we were establishing ourselves in the land, right? So now, all praise be to the Most High in Christ by way of the Holy Spirit. His mercy allowing us to come back in and rebuild things as they were before. You can read on in 18 and we'll stop there.
Verse 18. Also day by day, from the first day unto the last day, he read in the book of the law of God. And they kept the feast 7 days. And on the 8th day was a solemn assembly, according unto the manner.
Right. So just like we're reading, that's how they kept it too. Right. First day, 8th day, Sabbath, solemn assemblies, and they kept it throughout the week. So Numbers, this is what number I was telling you about. Numbers 29, the 28th and 29th chapter cover all the holy days. But as far as the sacrifices that were done for the Feast of Tabernacles, number 29, 12 down to 40, it goes into all the offerings that we did on each day, because each day has specific certain offerings and how many that we did. That's right. Numbers 29, 12 through 40. As you go through it, I won't read it now, just write it down, but as you read through it, it goes to the offerings that we did. And it's interesting how like certain offerings are kind of sequential. Like one day we offer one, but on two we offer two of a certain offering. So it's like it kind of went up sequentially. So it required preparation, coordination to make sure you did it right, so that we didn't die. Like we were reading about in the Day of Atonement service about where it says being cut off, right? You say being cut off among your people. Does that mean you can't come back? I have to leave? Read other scriptures like put to death, cut off. In case you were wondering, so we weren't cut off. Moses said, "This is what I demand: first day of the feast, second day of the feast, third day of the feast, etc., etc., etc." Yeah, Numbers 29, 12 down to 40. Now from here, let's go to Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 14.
What you said in Numbers was Numbers 28, right?
29. 29, 12 to 40. I was just saying Numbers 28 and 29 has all the offerings for those major holy days. Sabbath to the new moon to all the different holy days. Except for feast dedication, because that wouldn't come until later. 12 to 40.
This one you just got it
So Zechariah 14, we're going to start from 16. Just say come once you wrote it down. Let's go into the future. You might say, oh, he did that before. Okay, through our generations. All right, so are we still going to keep this thing, when you say Christ is coming back? Let's find out. Zechariah 14, 16, it says, and it shall come to pass, so this is going to happen, that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem, right, because the nations, right, they are enemies. First off, because they're enemies to our God. Their gods are idols. So naturally, they're going to be enemies to us if we're serving the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we're the head and they're the tail under the blessing. When we're cursed, they're the head and we're the tail. It's never even Stevens. It's never, coexist. You see those bumper stickers, right? With all the little idols on the back, The O looks like the Am, right? For the East Indians. And you got the T looks like the Roman cross, right? And the E looks like the crescent moon, right? From Islam. So it's like coexist. All religions, all people. Israel setting the standard. The other nations following suit. Like you alluded to earlier, Kahan. It tells you in the Proverbs, righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach or a shame to any people. So they're all supposed to be following it. But they won't really do it until we do it as a people. Then they'll follow suit. And they'll still have to figure things out. They'll still drag their feet. How do we know? We're going to read it now. It says, everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem, because when Christ comes back, a lot of them are going to die, but some are going to remain, right? Shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. So they're going to come to keep our Feast of Tabernacles in the kingdom. This is in the kingdom. We know this because this hasn't happened at all. Not yet. So it's a future time, especially if you look at when Zechariah was alive, when he wrote this prophecy. From his time going forward, it hasn't happened. So this still has not been fulfilled.
And also right here, they're going to worship the king, not a religious rule.
Mm-hmm.
Go to a church and worship. They're going to worship the king.
Right. Right. And not their vain king, which we in our foolishness envied them and said, we want a king like the nations. Samuel was mad and for good reason. What are you talking about? You don't need a king. Both sides like, it's okay, Samuel. I got this. It's something they're gonna have to learn over generations, but they'll get it eventually. Samuel was right though. It says, from year to year to worship the King Yahweh of hosts, to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, 17. And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King Yahweh of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. Oh boy. So whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth, showing you that there will be some that still resist even in that day, right? For one reason or another, right? Rebellious, right? Against the law, to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, right? We're going to have Christ there, but even Christ, he's going to be on his throne, but Christ is going to be telling us, I only do what the Father has me to do anyway. He's our King. Didn't I tell you guys back then when I came the first time? Our Father which art in heaven. See, I'm here, but he's the King. He's the King. He's the real King. Right? I'm just his representative down here on this level. But the Most High is King. It says, upon them shall be no rain. So just think about that. Think about, a man or woman's livelihood. Having no rain is not good. Right? Especially after a certain period of time. What's that mean? Right. You have orchards, you have gardens, you have pastures, right? Those things dry up. That's your food. Now you got to come out your pocket. If you're a government, you got to come out your pocket and make a deal with the nation next to you. Oh, my people, we need food. We're dealing with a famine, right? We saw famines and how it worked before, even in ancient times, right? We saw how even Jacob sent his sons that were living in Canaan. He said, go to Egypt. We hear that they got bread in Egypt. Go up there, or corn in Egypt. Go up there and get some food. Because, we need food too, right? So, no rain, right? That can lead to a famine and drought and other things that get real bad. And it says in verse 18, and if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh shall smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Right? So no rain, but now if you keep that up, now you're going to be feeling that plague. It's interesting that they mentioned the family of Egypt in particular, almost like the Most High is like, you have all the nations that aren't going to listen. You know, they might be ones that didn't learn from their Pharaoh from back then, right? Who had his, stiff neck, I don't want to let you go. I don't want to listen to your God. I want to keep your tabernacles. Oh, okay. You want to keep the tabernacles? I got something for that, right?
This is all because they disobey the law, right? So they got to learn that sin is to disobey the Most High's commandment. So they're not gonna have rain because they disobey the King's commandment.
Right.
So sin is disobeying the King's commandment or disobeying the law.
Absolutely. It says, 19, these shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. It's funny how it singles out Egypt in particular. But it says Egypt and anyone else who wants to not keep the Feast of Tabernacles, they have that lack of rain, which leads to the plague if you don't want to keep it. Well, regardless of what you want to do, if you do it or not. If you don't want to do it, that's secondary. I'm just going to see if you're going to do it. Because if you don't, you're going to learn. So yeah. So the Feast of Tabernacles is not something that went out of style. Right? The Most High's wisdom is timeless. The Most High knows how He made creation. Right? The Most High knows how these things can grow and grow in perpetuity, perpetual, right? To where you have to pull your hair out of your head, like you see with Esau now, all their knowledge, yet they lack wisdom. To where they're splicing genes and getting into hydroponics, trying to figure out, okay, how do I manipulate the fruits to make them grow a certain way, grow here, grow a certain size? It's like, just deal with the land the way you're supposed to. Let it rest every 7th year. Work it every year because you're so greedy. Don't alter it where the thing doesn't even have seeds in it because you want to make money and squeeze the farmers, right? We watched that documentary back in the day, Future of Food. They actually call it the Terminator gene that they put in fruits and vegetables to make it grow seedless. So that farmers every year, not only are they getting subsidized by the government, out of their revenue, they have to buy a new wave of seed every year, just so that these Monsanto Roundup guys can make more money off it. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Stop. So they're gonna learn, oh wow, stuff can grow this way without me having to, mess with it. Oh wow, I let the land rest every 7th year. It'll come back that much stronger in the next harvest, the next years of harvest. Wow, I actually do the Jubilee and do what I'm supposed to do during Jubilee. I can have all these fruits and vegetables for my people. Wow. Seeing is believing, right? You can read it now and tell them, yeah, you should do it. Who are you guys? We got you under control, right? It's just like, all right, when the tides turn, you guys will see. Then you'll sit back and go, yeah, this is a wise and understanding people, right? Like Deuteronomy 4 and 5, right? Man, that's the way they're supposed to be.
Also, the same thing that happened to us in Deuteronomy 28. If we disobey the laws of the Most High, then we would be put low, right? Within the law, whenever there's disobedience of the law, destruction follows. It's the same thing with them right here. Whenever there's the disobedience, right, that's the example right here. They don't come and worship the king, then destruction follows. So whenever there's keeping the law, abundance follows. So inherent in the law is punishment and also reward.
Come. And that's also the difference between in science they call potential and kinetic energy, right? Where like potential energy is like you sit something on the edge of a corner, whereas kinetic energy is when it actually falls and goes into motion. It's like a similar concept when it comes to like having power versus exercising that power, right? Like to have the power of the Most High through the Spirit is one thing. We have that now, right? We even exercise it to a certain extent, right? When we edify people, when we out there teaching, we got different unclean spirits that come up to the camp. We rebuke them, right? Sometimes, things might get a little more miraculous in some cases opposed to others. But it's a miracle every time we go out there to camp when the people don't, rush up on us. Most I can do a little bit more like we've seen where you can have, the heathen get on their knees, right? Or, what's the one video where the Edomite, like, starts having like a heart attack, falls over. It's just like, hey, right? I told you, if you don't like what's being said, just keep walking. Don't get extra with it. Because the Most High, we're in the times of grace for our people, but especially when it comes to you strange nations, the Most High wants, he can visit you right now and show you his power. Be careful. If you don't like what's being said, goodbye. Right? The Most High can show that power, but until that power is demonstrated, people won't respond, right? They'll just be like, oh, okay, that's all well and good. It's just like Pharaoh once again. Yeah, let you go. Okay, all right. Now I'm going to keep you. Moses is like, all right. Now it's time to show you the power of our God. So the Most High started actually jacking those Egyptians up, right? As you like to say, jacking up, right? Then it was like, oh, wow, your God is for real. And even with that still, it was like, Most High hardened his heart. Nah, I'm not going to let you go. Okay. Now we're going to mess this part of your government up. Now we're going to mess up your food supply. Now we're going to, now you can't see. Darkness, right? Like until that power is demonstrated, most people, even most of our people, especially the nations, they won't acknowledge our God the way they're supposed to. But, it's just the way it is, and it'll be even better when Christ does make a second coming because it'll be for lack of better words, a rude awakening, right? Because there won't be anything they can say because we gave them the warning. We told them what to expect. You didn't believe us. You looked at us and said, oh, you guys are just a little, offscoring of the earth, as Paul wrote, right? You guys are the little ones that we conquered, we have dominion over, right? But in that day, it'll be the big I told you so. The big I told you so moment. And no matter what you try to do, no matter what power you thought you had, it's not going to mean anything against Christ and his host. And that'll be that. Come. So let's go to St. John chapter 7. St. John chapter 7, just to show that we kept this during the time of Christ too. And even after Christ, along with the other holy days. But you ask most so-called Christians about Peter's Tabernacles, they scratch their head. Christ, when in the earth, he kept it. He didn't say, oh, this is done away with since I'm here. Let's start from 1. And Gaham Bakwa, if you read that, Baba Prashant.
St. John, chapter 7, verse 1. After these things, Yahweh shall walk in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry, because the Jews sought to kill him.
Right. So after these things, the things are talking about what happened in chapter 6. He's going to the bread of life and all that, what that meant. He walked in Galilee, which was in the northern region, right, of Israel. For he, Christ, would not walk in Jewry, which was like in the southern part, with the Romans called Judea, because the Jews sought to kill him, right? So he said, let me go up north. I got heat on me in the south, right? Read on to verse 2.
Now the Jews' feast of tabernacles was at hand.
So it's trying to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, which is kind of tricky, right? Because where's Jerusalem? In Judea. He's in Galilee. If he knows he goes down there, he's got the heat, right? People seeing it, going, he's here, right? And the Jews like plot to seek his life. Read on in 3.
His brethren therefore said unto him, Depart hence and go into Judea, that thy disciples also may see the works that thou doest.
Right. So the folks in Galilee said, yo, go down to Judea, right? So that your disciples down there can see your works, right? So that they can believe. Read on.
For there is no man that doeth anything in secret, and he himself seeketh to be known openly. If thou do these things, show thyself to the world.
Right. So let it be known this power that you have, right? And this and authority by what you're doing. That's what they're suggesting to him. 5.
But neither did his brethren believe in him.
Keep going.
Then Yahushua said unto them, My time is not yet come, but your time is always ready.
Right. So he's telling them, because remember, Christ had the foreknowledge of what he would have to go through after his 3 years of ministry, right? Which that had to be fulfilled, and wasn't that time yet. Hence him saying, my time is not yet come, your time is always ready. Read on.
The world cannot hate you, but me he hateth, because I testified of it, that the works there are evil.
Right. The world cannot hate you guys, flesh and blood, but it hateth me. Because why? I, Christ, testified it, referring to the world, that the works thereof are evil. He knows why they seek after his life, right? Because he knows that they have worldly ways about them. Hence, they want to kill him. Read on to 8.
Go ye up unto this feast. I go not up yet unto this feast, for my time is not yet full come.
Right. So he's telling them, go ahead, head down to Judea, partake in the feast, by all means, don't let me keep you. I go not up into the feast, into this feast, my time is not yet full come. Read on.
When he had said these words unto them, he abode till in Galilee.
Right, so he stayed in the north. Read on.
But when his brethren were gone up, then went he also up unto the feast, not openly, but as it were in secret.
Right, so he went down later on, right? Kind of went down, as we might say, incognito, right? Or we could joke and say incognito, right? Since he was a man of color. But he didn't go down with them, but went down in secret. Christ in his foreknowledge, probably even considering the safety of his own disciples, right? Him going down there and then seeing his disciples with them. Because he knew when it was ultimately going to be his time later on, that it was going to be time for his disciples also to face that affliction too. Hence, like we were talking about earlier, Peter denied him 3 times and all that.
And also, he knows his time was gonna come, but his time is not yet come. He was gonna go to the feast anyway, right? And also, like the disciples, right? He said, "Be ready all the time, because I'm there for a limited time.
Right.
So be ready to take charge. Like he always ready to take charge, because he knew he wasn't gonna be there with them forever."
Exactly. Keep going.
In verse 11, right?
Yeah.
Then the Jews sought him at the feast and said, Where is he?
Right. So they expecting him, right? Tabernacles time, right? All males must appear, like we've been reading. Where is he?
And there was much murmuring among the people concerning him. For some said, He is a good man. Others said, Nay, but he deceived the people.
Right. So there was a mixed opinion about Yahushua, right? Some thought he's a good man, right? He means well. He's a good one. Others said, no. He's just one that's trying to deceive. Right? He's a false prophet. Like we see even today, people's ignorance. Right? We see all these different leaders rise up with these different pressures we've been dealing with in the modern day Rome, right? And you're trying to figure out, as you see different folks on TV, on social media, right? Trying to figure out, okay, do you really care? Like, we know knowing the truth, okay, this brother, this sister, they sincerely care about their people. They might be going about it the wrong way, but they sincerely care about their people. Versus this person is acting like they sincerely care about their people, but they're trying to set a trap for our people. They've been, compromised. As the black empowerment folks call them, they call them like bootlicks, Sambo coons, right? They're out to exploit the people. Read on.
Verse 13, right?
Mm-hmm.
Albeit no man spake openly of him for fear of the Jews.
Right, because they didn't want to say, I think he's all right. And then the Pharisees and Sadducees hear, and they're like, oh, you agree with his teachings, huh? And now you're guilty by association, right?
And also in verse, it says, they cannot hate you. The world cannot hate you, but me, he hateth because I testify of it, that the works thereof are evil. Because Yahushua pretty much, pull their cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yahushua pretty much show what they are about. He was like a acid test, to them, right? So he pretty much show people who the people really are unclothed, right? So it's like pretty much he come there, he says testify of it. He pretty much show the people who the people in the world really is. I mean, who the people in the world really are, including those of our people, right, who were after him to kill.
You can keep going.
Verse 14. Now about the midst of the feast, Yahushua went up into the temple and taught. And the Jews marveled, saying, how knoweth this man letters, having never learned.
Right. So it's about the midst of the feast. So it's like probably the 4th or 5th day of the feast, right? And it says he went up to the temple and taught. And it says they marveled, saying, how know this man letters, having never learned? So it's like we might say today, who authorized this person to be teaching like this? Did he go to such and such school, such a university? Does he have his doctorate in divinity, right? Does he have his certification, right? And that was according to, our standard we had set up as Jews, right? He didn't go through the school of the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and scribes. How does he know all this stuff?
Yeah, it's like he's the walking law,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he doesn't have to learn it, right? He got the Spirit. He has the law in his mind, written in his forehead.
Mm-hmm.
It's 16, right?
Right.
Yahushua answered them and said, my doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me.
Right. So he comes on behalf of the Most High, who sent him. Read on.
If any man will do his will, right? If any man will do his will, he shall know the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself.
Right. So putting out there saying, check out what I'm saying. Right. You don't like me? Cool. Check out what I'm saying. Is what I'm saying against the doctrine of the Most High? Or am I speaking what the doctrine says? You don't.
Verse 18. He that speaketh of himself seeketh his own glory. But he that seeketh his glory that sent him, but he that seeketh his glory that sent him, the same is true. And no unrighteousness is in him.
Right. So even though he knew it would somewhat happen anyway with the people, he was trying to cut down that whole cult of personality thing, right? Don't just follow me because how I sound or how I look. Check out my code, my doctrine, what I'm preaching, my law, what I'm saying, right? Let that be the thing that sets me apart, not just me for myself.
Verse 19. Did not Moses give you the law? And yet none of you keepeth the law? Why go ye about to kill me?
Mm-hmm.
The people answered and said, thou hast the devil, who goeth about to kill thee.
So he asked them, like, none of you keep the law, like, how you go about to kill me, right? Like, you should already know this, right? To go according to the law. And am I not doing that? But yet you seek to kill me? And they're accusing him, saying that he has a devil. And he said, who goes about to kill thee? Right? Like, we haven't laid hands on you, not to say that they won't. They're saying, no one's laid hands on you, but clearly you have a devil. It's just like, okay, on what grounds? Read on.
Verse 21, Yahushua answered and said unto them, I have done one work, and ye all marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Moses therefore gave unto you circumcision, and ye on the Sabbath day circumcise a man. If a man on the Sabbath day receives circumcision, that the law of Moses should not be broken, are ye angry at me? Because I have made a man every whit whole on the Sabbath day?
Right. So calling back to that instance we read about, you read it, I think, in Matthew 12. It goes into this particular story with more detail. But yeah, he's pretty much putting it out there. Like, I did something well on the Sabbath, but because I, did quote unquote work, as you might say, now you are holding it against me, right? Because you're looking at it, you're straining at a gnat, saying, "Oh, you did something lawful, but you did it on a Sabbath day, and because of that, you're in the transgression." Right? Read on.
Verse 24. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment.
Right. So don't just say things at face value how they may appear, but with all you're getting, get understanding, right? Fully make a diligent search. Make sure a thing is certain. Figure out not just what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, but why am I doing it, right? Do some deeper questioning before you pass judgment, and thereby after that condemnation. Read on 25.
Then said some of them of Jerusalem, is not this he whom they seek to kill?
So the partner put two and two together, like, oh, is he the one? Is he that Christ we were looking for, right? Because remember, he went down kind of on a sneak tip, but now he went down to preach, to do his thing, right? As the Most High requires. So now trying to figure out, is he the one that the Jews were trying to come after? 326.
But lo, he speaketh boldly, and they say nothing unto him. Do the ruler know indeed that this is the very Christ?
Right. So they're trying to figure out, do they know this is the one? They don't do anything to him, but he's speaking boldly, but they just stand aside, right? They haven't, tried to lay hands on him or arrest him or anything. We don't.
Albeit we know this man whence he is. But when Christ cometh, no man knoweth whence he is.
Right. So we know him when we're seeing him, face to face. But doesn't the prophet say we won't know from whence he came when he does come? Like, how can we be sure, right? If he is indeed the Mashiach or the Christ or not? Read on in we're going to stop at 31, but read on in 28.
28. Then cried Yahushua in the temple as he thought, saying, ye both know me, and ye know whence I am, and I am not come of myself, but he that sent me is true, whom ye know not.
Wow.
But
check that out.
But I know him, for I am from him, and he hath sent me.
Right. So he's speaking on behalf of him, coming on behalf of the Most High. So it's like he's seeing what they're saying. He's able to discern spirits. Obviously, he knows their thoughts. He's putting it out there for them to understand. You know whence I am, and I am not come of myself, but I came from him who is true. He's the one that sent me. He said, but you don't know him. You can't know me because you don't know the Most High. You claim to know the Most High, but if you knew the Most High, you'd know me. You know everything I'm saying is on point. But due to your darkness in your mind, you don't know who I am, who I represent, the one you claim to follow. 29. I'm sorry, 30.
Then they sought to take him, but no man lay hands on him, because his hour was not yet come.
Right, so a miracle, if you will, right? Sought to lay hands on and take him. It says, but no man lay hands on because his hour is not yet come. So even if you had a will to take him, if the Most High didn't order it, right, from the heavens on down, it wasn't going to happen. right? So he could have walked right past him. Or we've seen other places where he did even something more miraculous where they tried to get him. I think it was like he had him like towards like a cliff or something or the edge of a thing. It says he passed through. He just kept on his way. And they're just like, the heck? How did he do that, right? Because the Most High, he's the one that's in charge of everything. And he knew, just as he told his disciples earlier in the chapter, it wasn't my time yet.
31. And many of the people believe on him and said, when Christ cometh, will he do more miracles than these which this man hath done?
Right. And we know the answer to that. We know the story, what happens later. Yeah, these are things that our Lord and Savior did. Of course, you can read on as you go into the chapter, but we'll stop here in this section. But these are the works of our Lord and Savior Christ during the time of the Tabernacles, right? As far as being in Galilee, then going down to Jerusalem after his disciples went down first, his brethren went down first, and then how he still did the righteous thing, but then kind of did it, but more of on an incognito tip, but it couldn't be hidden for too long. And he knew this because he's seen it put two and two together. Like, wow, how boldly he's teaching. Look at the things that he's doing. Is he the one that they seek to kill? Is he the Christ? Right? So they eventually put it together.
Yeah, it gets to a point where only the Holy Spirit can reveal who Christ is to it. So it gets to the point where even you can see him, you can hear everything that he's talking about, except the Holy Spirit reveal Christ to you.
Kind of makes you think of I didn't have this experience, but I know some brothers and sisters here and watching and listening have, as far as you might have seen a camp, whether in person, or you might have seen on TV, right? You're looking right at it. You've seen the brothers, you've seen the garments, right? The headpieces, right? Got the Bible out, watching the public access TV, program, whatever it was, watching it on the internet, however you saw it first. And like you said, Kahan, if the Spirit didn't come on you to show you what you were looking at, you're just looking at it like, oh, right. Pretty. I like these. I like his style, right? Got some flow about him. Some funny outfits they got on. Okay. And you just kind of just go to the next channel or just keep walking because the Spirit's not on you to really see what's going on. You're looking right at it and it's just like, oh. You just keep going. As opposed to when it was your time to see it, your time to hear it, your time to understand. You just look again, you're like, oh my God. You kick yourself like, how did I not know this sooner? How did I not see this sooner? What have I been doing all this time? Because now the Spirit's come on you to open those eyes, those ears, that heart. Now you know what it is.
That's exactly what he did to Peter. When he was with the disciples, he said, what did men say that I am?
Mm-hmm.
They start saying a bunch of stuff. They say, I'm just a prophet. Some say I'm this. They gonna say a bunch of stuff to make, sometimes they like to make the person feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say all kinds of, but they really didn't know who Christ was. And Peter said it, and he took it away from Peter right away. He said, so that Peter don't get high-minded thing, and he knew on his own accord. He said, no, flesh and blood did not reveal that.
Come. Let's get one more verse, and then we'll close out for the evening. We'll share some final salutations. But we just read St. John 7. We read from 1 to 31. Let's get the famous Colossians 2, 16 and 17. Of course, this being an example of that as well. Showing that for our brothers and sisters, especially our brothers and sisters who claim to be Christians, that the Feast of Tabernacles is still to be observed. We want to call ourselves Christians or followers of Christ. For our people that claim to believe and those that don't believe need to hear this, need to see this, need to know this. And Khan Yawakan, if you can read that, Baba Shah, everybody has it written. Colossians chapter 2, start at verse 16, we're going to read 17.
Colossians chapter 2, verse 16. Let no man therefore judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of an holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days.
Right. So Paul writing to the brothers and sisters in the city of Colossae, which we can look at ourselves as the brothers and sisters in Colossae as if he was writing this to us. He's telling us, let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink, meaning what you eat or what you drink according to the law, or in respect of an holy day that we're keeping right now at Tabernacles. It says, or of the new moon, which we kept 2 weeks ago, right? Blowing the trumpets. Or of the Sabbath days, right, which come every week. Check out 17, because this goes back to what we read in Zechariah 14, right? About what's going to happen in the kingdom.
Verse 17, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ.
These things are a shadow of things to come. These aren't things that are just, old news. Like we said before, that was back in biblical days. It was old time we did those things. These are things we're supposed to do throughout our generations, as we read tonight. And continue to do so, even, I was saying, until kingdom come, but even after the kingdom. It's like Khan touched on earlier, it's going to be in our inward parts. So we're going to be doing this in the kingdom going forward also. Like we read in Zechariah 14 earlier. These things are a shadow of things to come. So we're in that rehearsal time, right? Where we're trying the best to do it and letting our brother and sister know that we should be doing this, right? So remember, in the New Testament, right? Christ is that New Testament. The Old Testament was the blood of animals, right? Sacrifices. But the New Testament is Christ. His blood being sacrificed, right? But now we're still under the Old Covenant. So we're in the New Testament, but we're in the Old Covenant. And we went into the class on this. It's easy to mix those two together. Kind of like folks might mix together the virgin birth, the immaculate conception. Two different things, right? One is scriptural, another one is totally of man, right? Whereas these are both scriptural, we want to make sure we understand the difference between what the Testament actually is. It's not Genesis through Malachi. They call it the Old Testament, but literally the Old Testament represents the blood of animals that was sacrificed with sin. Christ is literally the New Testament, his blood being shed to be the go-between between us and the Most High. The Old Covenant, we're still under the Old Covenant, right? That's why we still are surrounded by Deuteronomy 28, Leviticus 26. But the New Covenant is going to be when the Most High writes the tabernacles, writes the first fruits, writes the Passover, writes the new moon, the Sabbath day, all the other laws that are there, where it's going to be in our inward part. We're just going to know it. We're going to know to do it. So that new covenant hasn't come yet. So New Testament, but we're still in the Old Covenant. We look forward to the new covenant, right? Which is what Christ is going to usher in when he makes his second coming.
It's gonna be new, right? But that's what the Most High intended from the beginning, and it was there. So it's gonna reinstate it, right? And to us, it's gonna be new to us, right? But it's Most High had already done it.
Right.
We mess up.
Exactly. Come. We'll make an end here. Let me at least give you this, these last words and a verse you can go with it. That can go with it. We're in the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, right? We read some scriptures that talk about it. There's other verses too, but these are the ones we'll cover for tonight. Remember, try to keep it to the best of your ability, right? Try to do things that keep you in remembrance of the Feast of Tabernacles throughout the week. If you have the means to make a booth or even, get a tent from, a camping store or something, if you don't make it with branches, however you do it, keep that in remembrance throughout the week. Even if you get branches and, decorate your house with them, right? With your family, something that you can do to keep you in constant reminding of this feast week going on. Definitely do it. And Ecclesiastes 43, Ecclesiasticus. Where's Ecclesiasticus? In the Apocrypha. Ecclesiasticus 43 and 30. Remember that verse because it tells you what? Put forth all your might when it comes to serving the Lord and how you can never go far enough. Right? So do it up to the best of your ability to stay in that spirit of Feast of Tabernacles. Right? stay in the scriptures as you always should. But stay in the scriptures pertaining to tabernacles. Read over the ones we went over tonight. Even if you haven't, cracked open your tools like your dictionary or concordance in a while, go through those. Read the scriptures. Look up different words. Look up scriptures pertaining to tents and tabernacles in your concordance. You'd be surprised certain verses you may find in the scriptures that talk about it. We may not have gone over tonight, or we may have gone over, but maybe some holy days before. But whatever it is that keeps you in that righteous vibration of this feast, definitely do it. See, the Kahanya got the decorations behind me, right? As I'm doing the service here, right? Where I got the makeshift booth behind me, right? So, whatever it is, definitely do that to remind you of this feast. So, no one else has any questions or comments. With that, I'll say Shar Chag Sakawath, which is Shar just means happy. Chag means feast. Sakawath means tabernacles or tents. Everybody was edified by the verse we went over this evening. Hope everyone enjoys their feast week. Hopefully folks can keep at least the first and 8 days as Sabbaths, if your schedule will allow. If not, still try to do it to the best of your ability as far as if you have to work on these first and last days, try to do things that keep you in that spirit, have it on your playlist. If you're able to listen to, scriptures while you do your work, you definitely do that to stay in the spirit the best you can during this feast week as a whole, especially the first and last days of the feast. So, Shachak Sakawat once again, and with that, we'll do the closing prayers.
Yeah. You said, about 43.
Yeah, 43 and 30. Ecclesiastes 43 and 30. Which reads, when you glorify the Lord, exalt him as much as you can, even yet will he far exceed. When you exalt him, put forth all your strength and be not weary. You can never go far enough. Rakati Yahweh by Shemi Hawashai, Asheranah from the now part Hagapim to Wada Aman. La Yahweh by Shemi Hawashai, Yashrab. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. My boy, upon you, Jerusalem, stand and face Jerusalem. Yahweh Bashan, Yahweh Shai, Babaku Shai, Shemai, Lanawa, Aifta, Yam Yen, Aifta, Yam Yen. Salak, Mike Allah, Wala Allahayim, Tazwadakim, La Shamar Aya, Barak, Rapha, Magan, Wa Chazayak. Banya Yashala Washalak Lanawa Rabium Kakamad Rabium Da'if Rabium Bayanad Rabium Sabalanwa Rabium Mama One Rabium Aqua Rabium Mahabium Rabium Aganad Rachanaya Wasalak Katayanawa, La Akim, Wa Akiwa, Wayashala, Them Yad, Waiwalam, Basham, Yehoshai, Kawadam, Aman. English translation, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us. Please listen to us now, right now. Send Michael and the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel. And send to us much wisdom, much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers and sisters in Israel, always and forever, in the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. Four corners prayer. Yahweh Basham, Yahweh Shai, Barak Nawab, Wayashala, Wabathia Saparium, Shema, Yashurallah, Yahweh, Elohai Nawah, Yahweh. English translation, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books. Then we said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Prayer for the food. Yahweh, Gadawo, Basham, Madawanya, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Barak, Makao, Yanawa, Shatayawa, Yanawa, Yayan, Yanawa, Lacham, Yanawa, Shakarab, Yanawa, Zachak, Sakawat, Basham, Yahoshai, Thuwadaman. All right, so Shalom Yasharala once again. Shakak Sakawat, all praise to the Most High in Christ by way of the Holy Spirit. Without them, none of this would be possible. May Israel continue to rise, continue to enjoy this Sabbath and the feast week of Tabernacles. So Shalom, we'll be speaking to you guys again next in the Friday class that's coming up. So Shalom, Yasharala.